And John had this incredible quiet sense of humor. That's what was really special about him. He had a presence, a quiet presence.
A man that absolutely was ahead of his time and yet never wanted to be kind of ahead of anybody else.
John Shields was a brave man, a brave and principled man, right to the very end when he chose the time he wished to die.
John was an incredibly complex person. He was warm, giving, and loving, and in many ways he also had a very determined, very strong side that at times could be very hard-edged.
He would look a premier in the eye and tell him or her what was required from the union's point of view. He was also the kind of guy that would sit at a serious dinner and pick up a bun and throw it at someone at the other end of the table. There's just so much that was entertaining and human and inspiring about him.
John was a Roman Catholic priest, and he was from New York City. He had a real New York accent. Used to come out occasionally, especially if he was really angry.
He'd become involved with Martin Luther King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
He spoke out. Didn't sit too well with the church. So John decided that didn't work so well for him. And he left the priesthood, and he came to Victoria.
He became a social worker, so that social side of life, how families function, how workers are treated in the workplace, all that kind of stuff, John felt all that. And he saw the union as a mechanism to pursue social justice issues.
So you're speaking of when John was at the lower level before presidency? Because that's an interesting time.
In the early 1980s, we're under attack by the social credit government of Premier Bill Bennett.
Telex started coming in of notices the government was serving on members, long-term regular employees, terminating their employment. Terminated John Shields.
We were both fired, coincidentally. And John said to me then, he goes, they've made a strategic mistake, because for our members, they will see if they can get away with firing the first and the second vice president of the union. How will a steward on the job be protected?
The union was not used to reaching out to community organizations, and John was.
He formed up the Solidarity Coalition, and we were forever changed as a union because of what John did.
A different John Shields emerged from that particular situation, one that really kind of opened the union up to the activists within the union.
He just wanted more democracy, more of a member-led, member-run union. The other real hallmark of John's presidency was a realization that at a time of shrinking government and privatization, you needed to be an organizing union.
So the BCG became a home for all sorts of working people that have been legislated out of the government and were not receiving justice at their workplace.
We represent workers in virtually every sector of the economy in this province. I wouldn't be a BCGU member if it hadn't been for John Shields.
No one had seen anybody like John Shields. He brought this sense of right and wrong, this not pounding the table kind of old trade union style negotiations and dealings. He brought a respect for people.
Leaders often are gruff and rough and just tell you what's going to be done and that's it. John was somebody who took you along on the trip, that made you part of the trip, and that gave you an opportunity to have input into it.
He really steered us towards becoming a social justice union. And so it was sort of his outreach to like-minded community organizations, the environment, anti-poverty working groups, childcare, women's equality, pay equity. All of those things were pieces that John brought to his presidency.
He supported women throughout our organization constantly. He'd push me to go do things, and I'd say, John, I can't do that at the Labor Relations Board. What, you want me to be a labor winger? That you can do it.
I remember a time at a Federation of Labor convention where the resolution was on women's right to choose. And John went to a microphone, and everyone knew he'd been a former Roman Catholic priest. And what John said was simply, women have the right to choose their bodies, their choice. And it was powerful because people knew where he had come from.
What the BCGEU saw under John is that the future is going to be different, and you can adapt to the future or get left behind.
It was bigger than the worker, the collective agreement, the grievance, the wages.
He was a pioneer, and by deciding that he would determine the date and the time and the manner of his passing was very much John.
We are the union that we are today. And we are the labor movement in a great part of what we are, particularly in British Columbia, because of John.
Leaders like John Shields, they're not born every day. We're just really lucky to have them.
They are driven by greed and lust for more, and they have all the financial resources in the world to reinforce that power. And what do we have? Well, we have each other. And that's pretty damn good.